And many thanks for watching KTN News. Welcome back to News Center as we continue to bring you stories making headlines. But now remember that conversation I talked about with regards to funding the county governments? Well, in studio with me is John Karani, chairperson of the Kenya Institute of Supply and Management, who will just be painting the picture with regards to funding the counties, especially after the 2 weeks of demonstrations witnessed in the country. Mr. John Karani, welcome to the program. And on the onset, the country has experienced weeks of demonstrations which have slowed down business, and now the two antagonists, the both sides, have gone into negotiations. From where you sit and from an institution's perspective, what do you have to say?
Our economy is actually still very fragile, right coming out of the COVID pandemic, and we're just picking up the political situation that went through the season of that, and then comes this. So, and you talk about an economy that's still literally in its budding stage. We have not yet reached the maturity stage where we can actually move on. And if those type of difficulties face, especially the city of Nairobi, which we all know makes up 60-70% of the economy, it just affects the rest of the country. So that has a very direct impact on the overall economy, the overall revenue generation activities, the overall economic activities that really spur the government and the country at large. So 2 weeks as it was, the ripple effect, the aftermath will take long to recover, coming right in the aftermath of a very difficult season when we're just picking up. So it's from where we sit, it affects economic activity, it affects productivity, it affects overall generation of revenue across all sectors.
And now as both sides go into negotiations and dialogue with the hope of that the issues at hand are handled, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary is asking for more time to release funds. So is it a question of the issue of funding county governments has been overlooked as this process goes on? And if so, then what is the best way to move forward so that counties get the funding that they need and so that the country as a whole gets to move forward?
So the National Treasury is actually caught in a very hard fix.
A rock and a hard place.
On the one hand, we're trying to reduce borrowing. I think the government has been very intentional about reduction of debt financing. On the other hand, there's reduction in overall growth of just productive revenue within the country, our own. And then on the other hand, the counties themselves are facing challenges in their own, what you call own source revenue. So the National Treasury is not, I don't think it's for lack of wanting to do it. It's the truth is that there's no money. The revenue collections, the dollar is strengthening, our imports are increasing, and our exports have reduced the very source of revenue. So I actually sympathize with the CS National Treasury. It's a tough position to be in when the overall economy is doing not so well. Overall economic activity has gone down, and here you are supposed to fund the counties or give the counties what belongs to them. So they're caught, indeed, as you said, between a rock and a hard place, and it's a tricky balancing act. But I'm hopeful that whatever the case, they will give whatever they have. Right now, we're running about 3 months behind schedule. I think about 96 billion is owed to the counties. That's a very direct impact on the economic activity. On the one hand, they also are not able to generate their own source revenue. It's never enough. The on-source revenue, whether it's made up of business licenses or liquor licensing or just the things that they generate, first of all, it's not optimized as it is. We've not really, the counties have not yet reached a stage where they are fully optimized on their internal revenue generation sources. The counties, for instance, I always say like Narok or, Narok especially, with the game park that sits right there, they should actually almost be self-sufficient. They should almost be completely self-reliant. So there are things that they still need to tweak at the county level to make sure they fully leverage on their own source revenue and reduce the dependency on the National Treasury. So it's a conversation that to continue going on. There are so many players, whether it's the council of the CR, the county revenue allocation team, the National Treasury, all the players in that multiplicity of equation. How can they continuously come together to refine this? It's not yet reached where it should be. It's not been refined in terms of what the Treasury can disburse, the timings and all that, and especially having that conversation to ensure, because there are also some impediments for the National Treasury, by the way. I think there's some grants that are a little bit pegged on some conditionalities. So all these things have a play in Treasury's ability to disperse the money as timeously as it should be. But whatever it is, they should disburse it.
And even as you talk about the counties expecting for funds to be disbursed, the counties themselves find themselves in situations that as a country it's unfortunate we have to deal with. These we talk about corruption, because with the devolution came the county governments, but seems like we also have devolved graft and corruption to the counties. So moving forward, as the counties continue to handle on-source revenue, making sure that increases, Nairobi this week has painted a very positive picture with regards to increment in taxes that they are collecting on source revenue.
Exactly.
How do they fix the gap that is corruption and graft in their counties so that money is utilized as expected?
I must always say this, it's a statement I strongly believe in. Even at the very worst, devolution is 100 times better than central government. I will tell you that because I come from one of the far-flung counties, and you can see, despite the corruption, the devolved corruption, there's been a trickle down of some benefits. There's some development. I always talk about this county called Tharaka Nithi, which was unknown. And then I went there the other day, out of nowhere springs a city called Kadwana. I never knew it exists on the map. But that is because of devolution. So even in its very worst form or shape, devolution or decentralization of services of government is 100 times better than centralized government. So despite all that, it is not a perfect science. Devolution is a journey. Unfortunately, it is true what you said. It has devolved corruption. It has devolved many other things, but it has also devolved some form of development. And so the striking of a balance and filling that gap is something that has to be an ongoing conversation between all stakeholders. And really, the key thing is, are we empowering the local people enough for them to grow their own revenue, to be almost, for lack of a better word, independent? We will never really be independent of central government, because there's still a lot of things that are anchored in the constitution that central government have to devolve. When you're dealing with people, unfortunately, you can never avoid the issues of corruption being devolved. You can never avoid the issues of this bad behavior trickling down from the national. Just like the good things go, but also bad things go. And for me, that is something that has to continue being discussed, being worked on. We're only 10, 12 years into devolution. So in a sense, we still have a lot of work to refine that, to perfect devolved government that actually meets the needs of the people. But I repeat, even in its worst form or shape, devolution is still a much better evil than the tyranny of central government.
And you've raised, you say that the national government owes the counties around 90 billion shillings. But even if the counties get these monies, just how prepared are they to receive these money for better services to the locals and the citizens?
That's a very good question, and I can tell you that from where I sit, and I've just come from 3 counties in the North Rift, counties are actually prepared, very prepared. They have done their plans, everything is ready. The thing about the whole issue around this funding is PFMA Act, that's Public Finance Management Act 2012, and the regulations that are put in 2015, and our own Public Procurement Act, they're all there. And the county procurement teams, supply chain teams, county budget teams are all ready. Preparedness is never the issue. Timely disbursement is the issue. So the counties are ready. In fact, I'll tell you that most of the money, when it comes, they already have users. So the challenge always is when you delay it so much, the timely utilization and real disbursement into the counties is so important in affecting efficient use of resources, in affecting value for money. When you delay, it reduces efficiency and ends up, not being utilized for the purpose for which it was meant. So it's never for lack of preparedness. The counties are ready. but we are not giving them the money on time.
And even as you say that the counties are ready, then the question is, in your own research, because you deal with the counties on a daily basis, which counties would you confidently say that they've put in place the best practices when it comes to procurement? Because after receiving the monies, then procurement comes into place. So who among the counties have put in place best practices, and what should others who have not done that do?
I must admit that in terms of best procurement practices, we're still a journey. There are counties that we still have to enforce more or less the Public Procurement Act properly, utilization of that, and we have not yet really done a proper ranking, and we need to do that. So that's a good question to think about. How do we rank them? And we'll work on that with our sister organization, Public Procurement Authority. We're working on that to ensure that counties are actually putting in place best practice procurement. But Makueni County has been a talk of town for a long time. They've done very well in ensuring that the utilization of funds is put to the purpose for which it was meant. There are other counties, and I think, let me not mention them now, because, but we are going to do, because at least Makueni's case in the public domain, what we will actually publish a ranking about counties which implement best procurement practices in the utilization of funds, because most of the budgets in counties really is procurement related, and so it's something that we must make sure we optimize it. Are we getting value for our money? Is Wanjiku, is Wafula, is Cherono or Rashid getting value for money for the back that has been given back to them? So it's an ongoing conversation that we have to continue refining.
And as we talk about that now, the world over, Kenya is not an exception. Right now, everyone is talking about cost of living. How has procurement, whether it is good or bad practices, influenced cost of living, either high or low? And moving forward, how do we make it better and easier for the citizenry?
Yeah, indeed, it's true what you're saying. We're living in a global dynamic situation, right, coming out of COVID. Then right at the back of that, the Ukraine war, which has drought for some very strange reason affected. I think the drought, God's case, as it were, got no appeal. The multiplicity of these factors have really affected the cost of living. And when you're dealing with fragile economies like ourselves in Kenya, and indeed Africa in general, we cannot afford this ripple effect. It's almost like a barrage of things that are literally hitting on us all at the same time, and I think we are not quite disaster prepared. Having said that, the key thing, and I just came from my village, if we could grow our local economy, grow local industries, and try to use our God-given resources, and we've really been blessed as Africa, I say this, with a lot of resources. If we can just, I was somewhere where mangoes are rotting, avocados are rotting. These are precious fruits, organic, they grow naturally, some of them. The tree tomato, which I grew up, it was literally growing wildly. How can we utilize those and make, cottage industries? This is how economies, like always say, this case of South Korea, they started like that, cottage industries, using their own resources with targeted. So it's got to be a plan, it's got to be an intention and support from government to grow local industry. From cottage industries will come global industries. That's what happened to South Korea. The likes of Samsung and the refrigeration guys, they started small, but today they're global industries. And we are at the same level with them, as you always say, the Asian tigers. Today they are miles and centuries ahead of us. So, but it's never too late to really calibrate our game and be very intentional in setting out local industries, because I can assure you the dependence on this global economy is a very dangerous thing for economies like ours. The vagaries of the weather, the global dynamism can literally kill us because we are so dependent on dynamism of the global economy. Let's grow and strengthen our local capacity and capability, at least to do one thing: produce food, feed our people. If we can do agricultural revolution, today we are in the 4th industrial revolution or 5th industrial revolution. We just need to start at the basics in the agricultural revolution, feed our people, and I think that's where we need to be.
And I think as we talk about that now, the next issue at hand would be how do we encourage or see loopholes within the counties with regards to on-source revenue so that they can find new sources to grow their own revenue so that they also don't become solely dependent on funding from the government?
Again, the Council of Governors and the Commission for Revenue Generation and the World Bank, there's been a lot of studies done by them in terms of on-source revenue. There's a lot of diversity, a lot of opportunities to grow on-source revenue. And that's really an area which is something that has to continue being discussed. And it's not for lack of doing that. And I think I've been fortunate to be part of the Council of Governors desensitization forums, where we have literally gone through discussions on how can we expand the breadth and scope of on-source revenue. And there's so many things, whether including things like liquor licensing, There's so many bars which don't give revenue to the counties. Why? Because maybe they're in collusion with some business people, some policemen. That's the tip of the iceberg. I talked about just right now about Transmara, which host of Masai Mara, Narok County. They absolutely don't need to depend on government. That real dollar that's paid for people to enter there, you can get a lot of money from that revenue generation. So I think the study shows there are like almost 10 or more than 10 ways in which parking fees, building licensing fees, hospitals, but there are counties which are heading there. There are counties which are way ahead in terms of generating their own revenue. And give them a few years, they'll be independent. What we need to do is how can we share best practice across counties? And I think the Council of Governors is doing a lot of this sensitization, best practice sharing, devolution conferences where we all come together to share best practice, to expand the breadth and scope of on-source revenue so that we eventually become dependent.
That is Mr. John Karami, chairperson of the Kenya Institute of Supplies Management, telling us how best we can be able to fund our counties so that, among other things, they become independent. Many thanks. This conversation definitely must continue. And right now we go to Kwale County, where President William Ruto is in Kasemeni, Mwache Multipurpose Dam Project, and he is in the groundbreaking ceremony. Let's just cross over to Kwale County and watch it live.
Muweze kufanya irrigation ndio kila mtu apate chakula ya heshima kwake mahali ambapo amezalisha hiyo chakula. Tunaelewana jameni, watu wa Kwale? So nimesema hivi, we are going to deliver water for irrigation from this dam in the next 36 months. We're going to deliver water for irrigation, and I want a forward planning process between the county and our ministry so that that irrigation component is actualized and we can be able to stabilize the food situation in Kwale County, kwa sababu bado tuko na matatizo mengi ya mambo ya chakula katika county hii yetu ya Kwale. Na mimi nitaifuatilia tuhakikisha kwamba hiyo maji inatumika jinsi vile tumeipangia. Vile vile napenda kuwatangazia kwamba maji ya Mzima 2 ambayo imezungumziwa kwa miaka nyingi, ilikuwa ni mpango yetu ya 2017 vile vile, lakini ilipelekwa lukumba mpaka ikakosa mambo. Leo mimi nataka niwatangazie nitarudi hapa baada ya miezi mitatu, maximum 4 months, nitarudi hapa kuianzisha rasmi. Tumekamilisha yale mambo yote ambayo yalikuwa yanahitajika. Wiki hii Jumatatu tulikuwa tunazungumzia funding ya hiyo program ya Mwache Mzima 2, na tunataka hiyo maji iwezeshe sisi tuwapatie maji watu wa Taveta, watu wa Undani, watu wa Voi, watu wa Mwatate, na iteremke chini tuwapatie watu wa Kwale na watu wa Kilifi, kwa sababu ni maji mengi. Lakini nimesikia kidogo hapa mumenichanganya kidogo. Nimesikia ndivyo mmesema ama sikuwasikiza vizuri. Ni kama mlisema hamu si ndio? Si hata nyinyi mnahitaji maji ya hii ya Mwache mtapata.
And yes, indeed, the president in Kwale County talking about the Mwache Dam project. And we hope that as he launches that, there will be no more Lukumba moving forward. My name is Dennis Aseto. Many thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your